Hey guys, in today's video I bring you an unbelievable and exciting story. Let's meet Isolde Warwick, a woman who suffered a devastating stroke and was misled by doctors, but who had an unforgettable near-death experience. During her journey, beyond she met Jesus, was taken to the river of life and received a miraculous cure that left even experts without explanation. What she saw and heard on the other side will give you goosebumps and change the way you see life and faith. So, before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now, get ready for this impactful story full of surprising revelations. The afternoon was hot and stuffy, the kind of day that makes you want to walk into any air-conditioned store and get lost in the windows. My daughter Aubrey and I walked leisurely through the mall, laughing about something she had told us about school. It was one of those banal moments, but I knew one day I would look back and realize how precious they were. That's when I felt something strange. At first it was subtle, like a slight tingling in the fingertips of my right hand. I shook my hand, trying to dispel the sensation, but instead it intensified. Within seconds, numbness crept up my arm as if a cold wave was spreading beneath my skin. I blinked, confused. My hand was shaking. The bag I was holding slipped through my fingers and fell to the floor. "Mother?" Aubrey stopped walking and turned to me. His gaze carried a hint of concern. I tried to smile, but my mouth didn't respond the right way. Something was wrong. "I am well, darling. Just..." My own voice sounded different, slower, choked, like my mouth isn't working right. She frowned. "You look strange, your face..." She hesitated. "It's a little crooked." Fear rose like lightning through my chest. I tried to lift my right arm, but it felt like it was made of lead. My heart raced. I tried to hold the bag again, but I couldn't. My body didn't obey me. "Mom, sit here. I'll call someone." I wanted to tell her not to worry, but I couldn't speak properly anymore. The words were slurred. My mind screamed, "This cannot be happening. I'm too young for that." Aubrey took my cell phone from my purse and dialed my husband, Elliot. I couldn't hear the conversation properly, just the distressed tone of his voice. I wanted to tell her that she didn't need to worry, that it was just a temporary discomfort, but the truth was that a deep fear was infiltrating me. "Let's go home," I muttered, trying hard to speak. "Drive home." Aubrey hesitated. "Mom, are you sure? Dad said to go to the hospital now." I was torn between my denial and the urgency building within me. Deep down, something told me that that day would not end as it had begun. Aubrey drove with her hands firmly on the wheel, but I could feel her fingers clenching tightly, the fear reflected in the tension in her jaw. I struggled to remain calm, trying to convince her and myself that it wasn't anything serious. But deep down, dread consumed me. My mind repeated in an unbearable cycle. This can't be happening to me. Halfway there, my phone rang. It was Elliot. Aubrey answered on speakerphone, and her voice sounded anxious as she explained the situation. "What's going on, Isolde?" Elliot's voice was full of urgency. I tried to respond, but my tongue felt heavy, as if I were speaking under anesthesia. "I am fine." The words came out slurred, and I felt a knot of despair form in my chest. On the other end of the line, Elliot didn't hesitate. "Go to the hospital now. Don't try to go home. Don't argue, Isolde. You need to be attended to." Aubrey looked at me, waiting for my decision. I knew I was stubborn, that I hated admitting weakness, but in that moment my body was betraying me. I nodded, and my daughter turned the steering wheel, changing route toward the emergency room. The next few minutes were a blur. Fear gripped me in a way I had never felt before. When we arrived at the hospital, Aubrey ran out to get help, and within seconds, nurses came with a wheelchair. "Madam, can you get up?" one of the nurses asked. I tried, but my legs gave way under the weight of my own body. The feeling of numbness had completely taken over the right side. My fingers weren't moving, and my mouth felt frozen. One of the nurses held my arm while another helped me into the wheelchair. "Pressure's low," someone muttered as they led me inside. The hospital's fluorescent lights seemed brighter, and the noise from the hallways seemed distant. They placed me on a stretcher, and soon after, a young, serious-looking doctor appeared at my side. "My name is Dr. Scott. Can you tell me what you're feeling?" I tried to respond, but my voice broke. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to explode inside my chest. "Ischemic stroke is suspected. We need to act quickly," I heard someone say. Then everything around me went dark. Darkness enveloped me like a heavy veil. My body seemed to sink into something deep and formless, as if I was being sucked away from reality. Sounds mixed around me, fragmented, distant. Doctors' voices, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, the muffled cries of someone, perhaps my daughter. I wanted to respond, to say that I was there, that I could still hear them, but my voice wouldn't come out. Suddenly, a shock ran through my body and the pain brought me back. I opened my eyes and saw myself lying in a hospital bed. The white lights and tubes connected to my arm gave me confirmation that none of this was a dream. My body felt heavy, strange, as if it no longer belonged to me. "Isolde?" Elliot's voice came from the right side. He was next to me, holding my hand, his face pale and his eyes red. I wanted to smile to calm him down, but I couldn't. My face was rigid. My mouth refused to move properly. My heart raced when I tried to raise my right hand, and nothing happened. "Elliot." I tried to speak, but my voice came out weak and slurred. I saw the pain on his face when he realized that my speech was compromised. He squeezed my left hand, the only part of my body that still responded. The doctor appeared soon after. She was a tall woman, with hair tied in a tight bun and a neutral expression. "My name is Dr. Rachel Thorne. You had a transient ischemic attack, which is a type of stroke. His exams show a lesion on the left side of his brain, which explains the paralysis on the right side of his body. Let's follow its evolution to understand the next steps." The word injury echoed in my mind like thunder. I tried to force my fingers to move. I tried to lift my arm, to do anything. Nothing. Despair took over me. "Will I get better?" The question came out fragmented, distorted. Dr. Thorne hesitated for a second before responding. "Let's work on it." It's still too early to say anything definitive, but I understood what she meant. There were no guarantees. I was silent, feeling my world fall apart. And then, as if the tragedy wasn't enough, the second crisis began. The shock came like an electric current. First a spasm in the arm, then a wave of numbness rose through my body and took over my right side again. An overwhelming panic took over me. Something wrong. I tried to warn, but my words were unrecognizable. Pain pierced my head like a burning blade. My vision blurred. I could hear voices around me, but I could no longer understand what they were saying. Someone shouted, "Convulsion!" Everything around me became a blur. Once again, I was swallowed by darkness. When I came to, the hospital room was completely silent. The lights were dimmer and night had fallen outside the window. The only thing I heard was the rhythmic sound of the heart monitor, recording each beat of my heart. My body felt even heavier than before, as if it were submerged in quicksand. The right side remained motionless, a cruel reminder of the gravity of my situation. I looked at the chair next to my bed and saw Elliot sitting there, his head in his hands. He looked exhausted. My chest tightened. I didn't want him to see me like this, vulnerable, broken. "Elliot." My voice was slurred, but he immediately raised his head. His eyes were red, filled with a worry he tried to hide. He took my left hand and held it tight, as if to ground me in reality. "You are here." His voice was a shaky whisper. "You're back." I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat. I wanted to ask what had happened, but before I could form the sentence, a frightening thought hit me. What if I never got back to normal? Despair took over me. My life as I knew it was slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do. My body betrayed me. My voice was no longer mine. And then, on an impulse of pure instinct, I closed my eyes and began to pray. God, I can't go through this alone. I don't know how to go on. My tears ran silently down my face. I had never felt so scared. Elliot, as if he could sense my desperation, leaned over and kissed my forehead. We will get through this together. Isolde, I promise. But deep down, I knew that not even he could guarantee that. It was then that a thought appeared, almost like a whisper inside me. Prayers. If my own strength was failing, if medicine couldn't give me an answer, I needed something greater. I squeezed Elliot's hand as hard as I could. Ask them to pray for me. I forced each word, knowing he would understand. If I couldn't fight this battle alone, then I would need an army. And that's how it started. Elliot made calls. My sister called a prayer group. Within hours, hundreds of people were interceding. For me, maybe thousands. I didn't know what would happen next. I just knew I needed a miracle. The night dragged on in the hospital, and the silence around me was oppressive. Despite the prayers that so many people were saying for me, I still felt a deep sadness, a sense of loss that consumed me. I closed my eyes, and in thought I cried out to God with all the strength I still had left inside me. God, I need to see my mother. Just once. My mother had passed away months before, and since then, missing her was an open wound. I wanted to hear her. I wanted to feel her presence. I wanted her to tell me everything would be okay. My body was weak, but my soul felt even more worn out. And then, something happened. It was as if an invisible veil had been lifted between this world and the next. An indescribable heat enveloped me, unlike any earthly sensation. It wasn't a fever. It wasn't an effect of the medication. It was something beyond human understanding. A soft yet authoritative voice resounded within me. Do you want to see your mother, or do you want to see me? The question paralyzed me. I knew without a shadow of a doubt who was talking to me. It was Jesus. Time seemed to slow down. My soul shook with the magnitude of that moment. I had begged to see my mother, but he gave me a much greater choice. I swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and awe. Then, in a whisper, I replied, I want to see you. The moment the words left my lips, everything changed. My consciousness detached from my body. The pain, the weight, the fear, everything disappeared. I was enveloped by an intense, translucent, and vivid blue light. I was no longer in the hospital. I was no longer limited by flesh and bones. It was a place that defied earthly description. The peace was absolute, profound, as if all the noise and pain in the world had been erased, and then, before me, was him. Jesus. His eyes were like fire and tenderness at the same time. His face exuded a love so pure that it washed over me like a wave. I didn't need words to understand how he felt about me. Do you want to come? He asked. And it was then that I understood. I had a choice. The question hung in the air like an echo that reverberated inside me. Do you want to come? Jesus didn't demand anything from me. There was no pressure, there was no imposition, just an offer, a choice I never thought I'd have to make. My heart sank, torn between an almost irresistible desire to move forward and the knowledge of what I would leave behind. It was then that I started to hear a sound in the distance. At first it seemed like just a murmur, an indistinct whisper, but as I allowed myself to feel it, the sound grew, becoming a constant flow, a noise I knew from somewhere. Water. The sound of running water, soft and powerful at the same time, filled the environment around me. It wasn't just any noise, it was something alive, pulsating, loaded with a meaning that I still didn't fully understand. Jesus noticed my confusion and smiled slightly. His eyes shone with something that seemed to be both compassion and deep knowledge. "This is the river of life." My heart raced. I knew that name. Revelation 22. I had read about it before, but I never imagined that one day I would be faced with it. The deep blue that surrounded me began to transform. I saw crystal clear water stretching out before me, flowing gently across a sparkling bed, so clear it seemed to contain the very essence of life. Giant, towering trees surrounded the river. Their vibrant green leaves seemed to glow as if they were bathed in golden light. The city in the distance glowed in golden and silver tones, emanating a glow that seemed more like a presence than a simple luminosity. My heart was filled with indescribable peace. For the first time since I got sick, I didn't feel scared. But then a memory hit me like a bolt of lightning. Aubrey, Elliot, my daughter growing up without me, my husband facing the pain of my loss. The peace I felt in that place was immeasurable, but the love I felt for my family was equally strong. Jesus said nothing. He just waited. My choice was already made. I want to stay. The instant the words left my lips, I felt a wave of heat take over my body. It was like something was lifting away from me, like an invisible weight was being lifted. Jesus looked at me and smiled, full of tenderness. "I'm bringing you healing." And then, everything dissolved into light. The light that surrounded me began to dissipate, and in the blink of an eye I felt a tug, as if I was being sucked back into my body. A shock ran down my spine, and then, as if emerging from deep water, I woke up suddenly. The hospital was exactly as I had left it, cold, silent, the heart monitor beeping a steady rhythm beside me, but something was different. My body, which had previously felt like it was made of stone, now pulsed with a strange energy. I blinked a few times, trying to get my bearings. My hands were on the white sheet of the bed. My chest rose and fell, with calmer breathing. It was then that I realized my right arm, my leg, my hand. I could feel them. The shock was immediate. My heart raced and tears filled my eyes. I made an effort to move my fingers and with surprise saw my hand respond. My leg, once motionless, now felt alive again. My eyes swept the room until they found Elliot, asleep in the chair, next to the bed. The tired face, the unshaven. My chest tightened at the sight of the man I loved carrying so much weight for me. "Elliot." My voice was firmer than I expected. He stirred, eyes blinking heavily before widening in pure shock. "Isolde." I tried to move more, and this time I succeeded. With effort, I raised my right arm a little, feeling the miracle unfold before me. Elliot gaped, jumping to his feet. "You... how? My God!" Tears fell from his eyes as he held my hand tightly. He had always been a rational man, but at that moment there was no medical explanation that could justify what we were witnessing. A few minutes later, a nurse entered the room and, upon seeing me sitting, stood still, blinking as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Mrs. Warwick, what? You shouldn't be able to move like this." The shock quickly spread throughout the hospital. When Dr. Thorne arrived, her expression was one of pure disbelief. I don't know how this is possible," she murmured, analyzing my reflexes, asking me to raise my arm, touch my fingers. Every move I made seemed to go against logic, but I knew exactly what had happened. The healing Jesus promised was not a metaphor. It was not an emotional comfort. It was real. I was being restored. And then came the last test. "What? About the brain injury?" I asked, my voice coming out effortless for the first time since the stroke. The doctor hesitated, as if the question had caught her off guard. "Let's redo the exams." Time seemed to drag on until the new results arrived. Dr. Thorne entered the room, papers in hand, her expression filled with what appeared to be a mixture of confusion and reverence. I don't know how to explain this," she began. The initial CT scan clearly showed the lesion in his brain. But now, There is nothing left. Elliot squeezed my hand tightly as tears ran down his face. I closed my eyes and smiled. I already knew the answer. 10 days later, I left the hospital. The nurses watched me with expressions that varied between surprise and admiration. Some murmured among themselves while others just smiled without words to describe what they were witnessing. My recovery had not only defied medical logic, it had completely dismantled it. As I walked out the hospital doors, I felt the sun touch my face, warming my skin as a gentle reminder that I was alive. Viva. Elliot held my hand tightly, as if he feared that if he let go, all of this might disappear like a dream. I still can't believe it, he murmured, squeezing my arm. Aubrey was next to us, her eyes shining with excitement. Since I woke up, she hadn't stopped looking at me, as if she wanted to make sure I was really there, in one piece. I thought I would never see you like this again. Mom. Her voice broke at the end of the sentence and I wrapped her in a tight hug. The smell of her hair, the heat of her body against mine, the way her hands shook as she held me. Everything was so real, so precious, that I felt tears run down my face. I had come back to them. Over the next few days, the story of my recovery spread. People who had prayed for me came to me, shared their own experiences, and testified to the power of faith. Some doctors avoided talking about what happened, unable to admit that science didn't have an answer. But I knew. One night, as I sat alone on the porch at home looking at the starry sky, I closed my eyes and relived everything that had happened. The stroke, the despair, the darkness, Jesus waiting for me in that place of light, the river of life flowing before me and his promise echoing in my soul. I'm bringing you healing, and he brought it. Since then, I have never been the same. My faith was no longer something abstract, something I only believed in because I was taught that way. I lived it, and now I needed to share. Every word that came out of my mouth, every account I gave about what happened was a seed being planted. For those who were without hope, for those who felt lost, for those who doubted the power of prayer. I couldn't force anyone to believe, but I could tell my story. And that's what I would do, because I was living proof that miracles exist. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.